In today's video, I'm going to talk about photographing on cloudy and overcast days. As you can see today, the light is very flat, very dull, and kind of in days like this, it's very normal for photographers to kind of lack motivation and lack inspiration, just not want to take photos. And as photographers, we're always searching for that great light, you know, that kind of golden hour in the morning or evening, and even during the day to help bring our images to life and add some character to it. But of course, it would just be too easy if that light was always readily available. And in many days, much like today as we head into the winter months, it's cloudy and dull. But overcast light shouldn't stop you from taking photographs, and today I wanted to discuss why. And we're going to go through 5 methods in which you could work with cloudy overcast days to work and create more photos. Let's get started. First tip is to look out for pops of colour, and that might sound a bit contradictory to when I'm saying that on flat overcast days you look out for pops of colour to bring your photos to life. But let me explain what I mean by that. You see, on overcast days, the light in the environment flattens and kind of gives everything a kind of muted feeling. And because of that, when there is a certain colour in the environment, that can kind of pop and really stands out, and that can actually help create a photo. And these could range from many things. It could be the clothes somebody wears in a shot, it could be the colour of a car, it could be the colour of trees in the autumn months, it could be a building, it could be many things. And that's where I think it's important to kind of utilise kind of colour to bring your photos to life. What I personally like to do is kind of like, if you find someone like a subject in street photography, where you can find someone, again, like the first example, you find like someone who's wearing brightly coloured clothes on a cloudy day, that helps kind of make them stand out, because again, the environment, much like it is now, the light is very flat, but you see things are standing out, things are popping. So that's where, again, like I said at the beginning, it's quite contradictory to where it's the light's flat, but yet colour itself kind of stands out. So that's one just to watch out for. The next example is to utilise basic techniques. Now that might seem a bit kind of simple and a bit maybe too simple actually, I will say, and a little bit kind of like, well, that's kind of stating the obvious, but hear me out. So on overcast days, what I believe is actually just sticking to the basics helps create your photos better. So for example, if you're someone like me who likes kind of the technique of frame within a frame, that's something I like to use. Like, you can use that in any kind of light. That is not something that's necessarily dependent on the light being great. Same with things like, you know, the rule of thirds, or the leading lines perspective, or reflection shots. So these are things that don't necessarily have to have great light for you to create your images. And as I said, the beauty of those techniques is that, again, you can do that at any situation, in any kind of form of light. It doesn't need to have any situations or scenarios or environment for you to create those photos. Those are kind of techniques you can use anywhere, anytime. So though it might be simple, don't rule it out. That's actually something that could be beneficial to you. That's something you can help give you a starting point in your photos on a not necessarily dry, but overcast, cloudy day. Next one I would say is to shoot in black and white. Black and white photography really does suit overcast days, because when you think about it, when you're shooting in black and white, the monochrome aesthetic of that already flattens the image. So if you're working with an environment where, I say, the light on a cloudy day, the light is already pretty flat and pretty boring as such, it doesn't really cause much of a problem. And when you shoot in black and white, you're not really looking to capture colours or kind of like anything like that. You're looking to capture more textures and tones of photos. And on cloudy days, that kind of works in your advantage, because that really accentuates the monochrome aesthetic of black and white photography. I mean, a lot of this is definitely a video for another day, but certainly if you are going to shoot anytime, black and white photography is similar to like what I said in the previous point with like basic techniques. You don't really need any kind of like special light or any kind of environment conditions to shoot it. So definitely black and white is something that I've come into recently, has really benefited me and could be beneficial to you if you shoot in monochrome on overcast days. Really helps add more to your photos. The next one, and my personal favourite, and that is to photograph in the rain. I believe shooting in the rain gets a bit of a bad reputation, and I understand why. Obviously, as photographers, we want to have that good light to help bring our photos to life. And if you're working in rain, well, in theory, there isn't going to be much light, because it's just going to be cloudy and overcast. But what a lot of people overlook is the fact that rain brings so much life and character to your environment. So in street photography, suddenly this actually illuminates the area you're shooting in. It suddenly adds a lot more character and a lot more texture and tones to the environment, such as like reflection shots. on the ground, or it kind of like adds that bit of maybe, not just necessarily saturation, but certain kind of like more tones and textures to it. And of course in street photography, the one thing that I love shooting in the rain is the usage of umbrellas. That for me has been, when I first came across that technique, I went absolutely tunnel vision on that, and I just absolutely loved shooting with people who were wearing, like, who had an umbrella, and they would have them kind of walk through the shot. If you go back through my body at work, I have this in abundance. Another bonus technique when you're shooting in the rain is to kind of shoot through windows, because when you're in the rain, the condensation adds a bit of kind of texture to the glass, so that can add a bit of kind of like, almost kind of an abstract form of photography, and adds a bit of more creative element to it. So this could be you're shooting from inside a shop out onto a street, or through like a bus shelter, or even onto a bus where you're seeing like someone sitting in through the bus window. These are just another kind of like methods to utilise the rain to your advantage and add a bit of more creativity to your photographs. And the last technique we move on to is to overexpose. Now that's a bit of a controversial one, so stay with me when I say this. So what I mean by overexpose is that when you're shooting in flat lighting conditions, the environment is naturally already very darkened for you. So as photographers, we look to focus and shift our exposure to the centre, like shoot as centre as possible, where you're not casting out shadows too much and not blowing out the highlights. But if you do that, you're going to be shooting in pretty much dark, because if you expose for the highlights themselves are already pretty negative and pretty dark already. And when you think about it, the beauty of shooting and photographing in overcast days is that there isn't much detail in the sky as it is. So if you overexpose in your photos when you take them in camera, is that you're not going to lose any detail there anyway, but you are gaining detail in the shadows, because like I said earlier, they are going to be very dark because the light is very flat and overcast. So you can kind of find a happy medium there, where you've overexposed in a sense where you can blow out the highlights and gain a bit of detail in the shadow, but you've not kind of made the shadows too noisy and added too much kind of over texture to them, and you've not really kind of damaged your highlights too much as such. Now there are two ways you can do this. It's down to your preference. You can either overexpose in your camera when you take the photo, or obviously of course you can just manipulate that in post, either on Lightroom or Photoshop. Me personally, I always live by the method of get it right in camera first, and then after that you can add your filters and exposures and adjustments afterwards. I just think, for me personally, it's cleaner to get it in camera first than it is to kind of add massive variations and changes when you're editing your photos. So that is it. Those are just 5 little techniques you can use to help photograph on overcast days. Just saw the weather forecast day, I thought this has got to be in the mood to make this kind of photo, because again the light is not really perfect and it's not ideal, doesn't mean you shouldn't go out there and take photos. But I do hope, as always, you found that video helpful. If any of these resonate with you, let me know. If there's any I missed, also let me know. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.